open to anyone. And so we're super excited to always have a good turnout for these calls. What we try to do is provide updates on what's going on in Washington, what we're working on, and ways for you to get involved. We know it takes all of us. This is a movement that we are building and growing. And so you're so important to that effort. So I'm Liz Powell. I'm the founder of G2G Consulting and founder of the Women's Health Advocates. I've got amazing teammates in this effort, and past monthly calls, we've gone over the leadership team, and I think you've gotten to see them. And those who have video on who can do that are showing their faces. So really amazing team that we've got from all sectors, all parts of the ecosystem in women's health. Okay, so let's get right into it. So next slide, please. This is what we're going to cover today. We're going to go over some updates, our legislative efforts, and then close out with our advocacy and our events that we're planning that we want you to be a part of. And then we'll take your questions. Next slide, please. Okay. So first off, on March 14th, they passed the continuing resolution, which level funds, a continuing resolution is supposed to level fund current programs. And it was very stressful for a while. A lot of the agencies didn't know what to do. They were holding on grants because they didn't know what their funding level would be. So they kind of did what's called a dirty CR. In other words, they didn't just do a clean CR where it's just level funding everything. They included like increases and decreases and certain descriptions that make it not a straight up continuing resolution. So a couple of the challenges that were in there, of course, Department of Defense got a 6 billion increase, while the non-defense got a 13 billion decrease. And then specifically, there's a great military medical research program that got a 57% cut across the board, which did impact women's health. Some of the programs that were cut were like lupus and breast cancer research, ovarian cancer research. And it's really up to the Pentagon to determine how they're going to implement those cuts. Congressional folks have tried to send over a letter to give some direction on things to fund within that cut, but it's really up to Department of Defense to determine that. Other things, there was a 69% cut to the Innovation Fund over at NIH. And then there were some new authorities given to DoD to do new things, new initiatives, but not to the non-defense. So that means NIH is limited. Any kind of new initiatives are limited. And for the first time, they did not include language that tells the agencies how to spend money. So it's really completely up to Trump and the administration. That's really unprecedented. And not to get too into the weeds, but that is what's giving the administration so much power to do all the cuts that we saw happen yesterday and that have been leading up to, but really implemented very harshly yesterday. So yesterday, I'm sure we all were tracking, but 5 NIH directors were let go, including the institute that does all the gynecological research, the National Institute on Child and Human Development. That was a big loss. I had actually just met with some leadership of that institute and some others recently, and so they knew that something was coming, but it came basically even before 8 o'clock yesterday. So as people are going to work, and I had another friend send me pictures, insane lines just to get in, just to be told that their badge doesn't work or to just pack up as soon as they get there. So it was really demoralizing how it was done. So a lot of people are very, very frustrated. And then, of course, what's happening is it's hollowing out many very important grants and programs and contracts. So it's really we're at a point now where we're just trying to figure out what is going on, what is going to keep, and what is completely gone or what is slashed. So there's also been a directive to cut grants that do make it through the DOGE evaluation, but they have to cut it by 35%. And then any new grants that are supposed to be for this current fiscal year, they have to wait to get approval from RFK Jr.'s team and the DOGE team. So things are really held up, and anything with reference to diversity is just getting stopped immediately. It requires significant arguments, explanation of science and what that means to accuracy right now. So that is the state of things. It's very challenging, and we're trying to collect stories and facts that explain what this does in a very frankly unemotional way, just the facts of how the secretary's decisions are impacting the health of women, the pipeline of researchers, just the institutional, the companies, like everyone is getting affected. And so Pariah Baim on our team, actually, she's the founder and head of Cellmatics Therapeutics. She is putting together stories. If you have stories or want to get the word about that, please, I posted on LinkedIn about it, and we'll do as a follow-up because we do want to collect those stories. It's super important that we get the facts and the stories of impact. So moving on, though, we're going to just keep moving forward. So FY26 appropriations process is just getting underway. And so we have been working really hard on our submissions, and I'm going to give a more of a background on that and in a second here. But the big focus right now is FY26, which starts at the end of September, or really October 1st is when it starts. And then the second big item is the budget resolution, which they were supposed to negotiate out this week, but the speaker decided to suddenly send everyone home because he didn't like that 9 members of his caucus chose to vote with Democrats to enable new parents to vote by proxy. Just a short window when, if any of us have been there, you're juggling new babies, it can be very tricky to get back to the Capitol, especially if you have to fly from across the country with a newborn baby. So some very bold folks spoke up and said, come on, let's do something. And the speaker was very upset. So he suddenly shut it down. So we actually don't know what's going to happen, if there'll be some negotiation, but it looks like he's digging in his heels on this one. So we'll see what happens. But definitely some props and showing that I think some people are feeling frustrated, like no one is speaking up, but people are speaking up. We also had 25-hour breaking the record by Senator Cory Booker in the Senate the past 25 hours. It ended last night, actually, talking about, the concerns with the cuts that are happening, impact across the board. And so there is starting to be some pushback, on both sides. We are hearing privately some members saying that they are not just going to go along with deals anymore. They're not just going to sign on to a continuing resolution. They want individual appropriations bills. They want to be able to promote issues they care about. So we are starting to see some rumblings. We still got court decisions of something like 130, 140 cases of different lawsuits out there, and about 40 of them have come back. There's still much. So I think by the fall, we will have things leveling out. So just keep the faith on that. And we, of course, are staying in front of everyone to constantly talk about women's health. All right, next slide, please. All right, so what we've been active in, been going to lots of fundraisers and meetings. So we are talking directly with those who are most powerful as far as controlling funding. So that is called the Appropriations Committee. And just a quick civics lesson, in our Constitution, all funding measures must start in the House of Representatives. So the House is always first, and then the Senate follows suit. And in the House and the Senate, there are what's called an Appropriations Committee in each chamber. And within that are 12 subcommittees. Each of those 12 subcommittees have their focus areas. So there's one subcommittee just on defense. No surprise there. Of course, there's another subcommittee that covers labor, health and human services, and education. All the stuff that we all care about in one bill. There's another one on commerce, justice, science. There's another on financial services that has a lot of housing initiatives in there. So they spread out across these 12 bills. So each bill has their own subcommittee. That subcommittee drafts the bill. They pass it out of subcommittee. Then it goes to full committee. Full committee passes it out. And then it goes to the floor. And then it gets sent over to the Senate. And that usually happens between now and summer. And they're all go home for the month of August. And they come back in September and they start to negotiate to come up with final agreement. And ideally, there's supposed to be 12 what they call conferenced bills that pass the House and Senate together, and then the president signs into law. What has been happening for many years, though, is an omnibus bill that has everything in it. But still, an omnibus is better than a continuing resolution because it includes new language, new funding directives, and it's also in line with what's going on in the world right now. Whereas if you use a continuing resolution, it's based on basically information from like a year to 2 years ago. So it's much better. So within that process, all 435 members 100 senators have their appropriation submission system. And so we work with each office to make requests and go to these fundraisers and meet with folks directly. And so I shared a little bit of insights I got from going to some of these events. I will say the chairman of the health funding committee, one of the chairmen, was very interested in women's health when I started sharing basic facts about 2/3 of all Alzheimer's patients are women. Women are twice as likely to die after an ER admission due to a heart condition. Fascinated, eyes popping out. Did not know this, but we all know very well. And I found him very interested and he wanted to learn more. How do we work with you? We followed up with the staff. Again, very interested. And so we're trying to turn that interest into actual increased funding, increased dedicated resources, better policies. So we're working through it and we're not going to conquer Mount Everest all at once. So we have to be reasonable in how we do this. So we've already made 40 plus requests in, which is an individual form each time that you have to fill out. And there's certain things, it's a combination of really good facts, alignment with an account and the bill, and then alignment with that member of Congress, and then some impact in that district or state. So it's a lot of things that need to come together for each form. It's quite a bit of work. So what we're doing is we're requesting 200 million for NIH women's health research, 5 million for FDA women's health pathway. So that's the gist of we also are working on we had some great conversations with a Republican senator on a defense request. So we're working on maybe some menopause language within the defense bill and some dedicated resources for those going through menopause in the military and in the VA. So there's some other efforts as well. Just to give us more hope, there's lots of bills out there. There's over 50 different bills actually addressing women's health. This is pretty great. And Madeline and Sydney on our team do a great job. They track every week what's coming out and we organize it. So we are on top of what's going on. And so amazing teammates who track all that. So there's lots of different things touching Medicaid. There's contraception, maternal health, OBGYN care in the deserts, the over 1,000 counties now with deserts, PCOS, fertility. I have a little story on fertility I'm going to share in our next call with the steering committee that's pretty interesting about a recent meeting at the White House. Breast cancer, legislation on that our Breast Cancer Early Detection Coalition is supporting. And then we are about to get new legislation called Find It Early Act, which is our number one priority for the Breast Cancer Early Detection Coalition. That's about to come out. Childcare is really big, and childcare is a really important part of this reconciliation process and the tax cuts that they're trying to preserve. So we will be tracking and engaging there. And then human trafficking, sex trafficking is a big issue we're seeing. So there's lots more, but just want to give you the highlights. Finally, this last bullet, I want to make sure that we're keeping in mind. Given the climate that we're in, our success may be just protection and preservation. So it's really important that we keep the Office of Research on Women's Health intact, that we limit the Medicaid cuts. I think we have eyes wide open. There will be Medicaid cuts, but it doesn't need to be 880 billion. Maybe it's 200 billion. And that might be a success for us. We have to be realistic about what we can do. And maybe we can put in, strings in there that require continuing. For example, right now, the whole year long of care that a woman is given postpartum, things like that, doula access. There are things that we will be working on that is just preservation and education and building relationships. All of those are part of our strategy and what we're doing. And so I want to be clear about that as we go forward. So next slide, please. Advocacy and events. Okay. So I don't know, Leslie, if you want me to pass to you for this one, because you've been our master of our new advocacy tool.
Okay, so we've just added a tool to the website, but I'll ask you to give me 24 more hours to tweak it. But it will enable anyone to come to our site and submit a letter to their member of Congress. We'll have the options of both Senate and House. And all you have to do is type in your name, your address, and your zip code, and it will pre-populate your member. And we will put in a template for a letter in there. So we'll script it. And the two that we have scripted so far are 200 million for NIH women's health research, as well as 5 million for FDA women's health pathway. All you need to do is click send. If you'd like to add something more personal, there is a section where you can insert your story. We've been advised to keep it short and sweet because actual humans read these letters. Every office of every member of Congress has someone that needs to go through these submissions and catalog them. So we encourage you to make it personal, to make reference to your particular district if there's something going on there, a personal health issue that would benefit from this kind of funding, please go there, encourage friends to go there. We'll be posting it on social as well. We really need to up the volume that they hear from us. And just so you can rest assured that it won't go into some black hole, what we've done is we've come up with separate subject lines. There's things you can do so that they're not just dismissed by AI as the same old letter. So we've taken care of that on the back end to empower you to submit your requests directly to your members.
Awesome. Okay. So these upcoming events, April 23rd is the online breast cancer early detection congressional briefing. That we're starting to get RSVPs for that. So please register for that. I think that'll be great. We're working on Madeline again has been taking the lead in communicating with the four co-sponsors of the Find It Early Act, who are Senator Klobuchar, Senator Marshall, who's a doctor, and Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, and Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick. So bipartisan, bicameral. And we started to get at the end of last year more and more co-sponsors. So I feel like we've got some momentum with this now. So that's exciting. We're going to hopefully get them all to speak. We know we've got Congresswoman DeLauro confirmed. So that's exciting. So please be sure to dial in for that and spread the word. We're posting on our LinkedIn. So please like, repost, etc., because we want to get a lot of people educated on that. April 29th is our CMS reimbursement discrimination and impact on women's health briefing in person on Capitol Hill. We do see we are getting a lot of registrations for that. And we will have limited seating for that. So unfortunately, I don't think that everyone is going to be able to come to that one, but we will circle back with you. We're working on that in the next week to confirm that. We've got amazing speakers, including Jocelyn Fitzgerald on our leadership team, who's the physician who does all these surgeries, gynecological, urological surgeries, and has actually studied all the codes that CMS uses to reimburse. And based on pure math, on average, 30% lower reimbursement rate if that surgery is performed on a female instead of a male. So completely unacceptable. And that actually impacts the care of women because divisions of healthcare centers have to shut down if they don't make enough funding to keep the doors open. It also impacts the surgeons. It impacts so many factors that shape the ability of women to get these surgeries, how long they have to wait to get them, the outcomes. So it'll be a fascinating event. I'm super excited. And we do have one Congresswoman confirmed to give remarks. We're working on getting another. So that'll be a great event. However, that is just that event because there's other things happening that day. So it is just going to be that event. It won't be like a whole day of activities. Third is our May 21st Sex Matters congressional briefing, and then full on Capitol Hill Day. And that is really for our steering committee, first and foremost. And we've got amazing speakers now, all confirmed. There might be one or two additions, but for the most part, we've got our amazing lineup. It will be for that briefing, we'll have two panels of speakers. First panel covering that landscape of women's health gaps to really explain women's health, that holistic definition. Second panel gets into specific diseases and conditions. And we are covering everything from adolescent through to aging. So it's going to cover all age groups, many different health issues, and we want to make sure we're really connecting with those who are attending, which will mostly be congressional staffers. We're working to get a few members of Congress, but it will mostly be congressional staffers. So, and then after that, we will have a really special reception, private reception, invite only with members of Congress. So it's going to be a spectacular day. And there are the links. We should put those. Actually, I'll put them in the chat box if they're not in there yet. But we have links to register for these. So we want to make sure you have that. I'll make sure we put that in there. And we will then send to you the details for that day. And if you are on steering committee, you're invited to everything for that day. If you are not on steering, but you want to come, just to help cover our costs, we are charging $500 per person to come participate in that day. So, but we will send follow-up details on that. For now, just getting into our registration system. That way we know to follow up with you and give you details and to share that information. And that's it. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've got some events we're working on and outside of DC that we are excited. And Leslie, if you want to cover, you're welcome to, or I can go over these.
Sure. What we've heard from a lot of you, thankfully, you are across the country, and so this is a national movement. And what we'd like to do is hold gatherings for women's health advocates that are adjacent to other women's health initiatives going on, whether they're conferences or meetings or panels. We'd love to be able to feature some of our steering committee members on those panels when appropriate. So we are relying on you to work with us to build out these local initiatives. And you'll see just a few that are planned. This does not mean that these are the only ones we plan on doing. We've had great interest from other places as well. What we would ask is that if you are interested in helping us to plan any of these in your region, or whether you're planning on attending a conference, please let us know so that we can kind of harness the might and the enthusiasm in markets of our members.
Okay, and there's a couple events. I just sorry, I'm trying to get the posted. Did someone on the team post how to register for these events? I want to make sure. Oh, you know what? Go to our events page. Go to our events page for women's health advocates, and you can register that way. That's the fastest way to do it. Sorry. I want to just make sure people know to do that. Okay. One thing I want to quickly, can you go back to that so we just on this event so May 8th and 9th, some of us like Beth, Netta, Marissa, some on the leadership team are speaking, Elizabeth Bailey, for a conference that is all about healthcare. It's been going on for 20 plus years. They've not once had a women's health panel. So we're super excited. We're going to tap into new audiences, new investors, and hopefully get them engaged. So while we're there, we're thinking we'll do a gathering. In New York, we just did this recent one. Leslie, Beth, Linda, Marissa, Valerie, a lot of folks were there. It was great. And people, Kristen, like Rick, like a lot of wonderful folks who are real leaders in women's health coming together, talking about things that we can do together. And we're going to work on a whole media plan, thanks to the amazing Kristen Dahlgren's going to help us do that. But there's lots happening when we come together in these smaller groups. It's super powerful. Same thing with PE Win. We've done a couple of those that have been really powerful. So that's why we want to do these meetups. So these are around conferences, like in Chicago, it's the Women in Medicine Conference. We're going to plan around that. In Boston, it's the Women's Health Innovation Summit. So we're planning around conferences. There's some others coming up that we're working around, like the MedTech Women. That's one in San Francisco. So anyway, let me know if there's other conferences and you think we could plan some gatherings around it. That's great. And not all these have to be big events. Sometimes it's just like 20, 30 people connecting. Other times we can do nice big events. So anyway, so we're open to anything. And we've got a few minutes. I guess we could do questions. I see Carla's got her hand raised. How do people ask questions? Do people just put it in the chat box?
Or they can drop it in Q&A.
We have a Q&A feature. I don't see anything there right now, but.
All right. People put it in the Q&A. Let's do the last 5 minutes on Q&A. Thank you. Yeah. Put it in there. We'll answer your question.
Oh, one thing I'd like to mention is we would like to have representation on the Women's Health Advocates group of people in each and every state. We are, I think, like 11 states short. So what would be fantastic is if you could publicize on your LinkedIn or among other communities of yours to your colleagues, the link to our site and encourage them to join. We'd love to have membership We'd love to have steering committee members as well, the paid members, but we really do just want to grow our numbers because we think that the types of initiatives we're doing are going to help us all, the more of us that are a part of it.
And Liz, we have some questions in the chat about ARPA-H, Sprint for Women's Health, about those monies, whether they've been canceled, and also for you to spend a moment explaining the FDA Women's Health appropriations request.
Yeah. So ARPA-H is still alive. We actually some of us saw Chelsea and some folks from ARPA-H actually at the Power of X conference and talking about like, how is it going? And I've been doing some sort of offline communications just to stay on top of it. So women's health, the Sprint for Women's Health is still there. They're still funding it. And they actually are coming out with some announcements. So there is going to be new money coming out. There will not be another women's health focus, though. It will be programs around different areas of interest of the program managers. And so within that, though, you can put an emphasis on sex differences or, women's health impact. So the door is open for that, but just don't wait for some Sprint for Women's Health. There will not be another one of those. They're still not sure if Jason Roos is going to continue to run ARPA-H or if they're going to bring someone new in. And ARPA-H did survive the massive cuts that happened yesterday. It seems like fairly well. So that's ARPA-H. And then as far as the FDA, we're basically using all the information wonderful folks like you told us about going through that FDA process. And I want to give a special props to Sabrina Johnson of Dare, because she really has been through the ringer. Another Alicia Chong, like just bringing these innovations through FDA has been very challenging because if you're probably familiar, but you have to space out like 90 days between these meetings you're allowed to do with FDA. So if you waste your meeting explaining what female biology is, then you lose time on really focusing on the clinical trial design and getting that clinical trial going and getting through the approval process. So that has been a frustration. And there's also it's taking too long to bring innovations to market. So this is what this effort is focused on, is ensuring that the expertise are at FDA, and then we can streamline that process that will help. It will help patients, number one, but definitely companies, investors. It feels like it's too risky for many investors in the space. We're trying to de-risk. So there's a lot of advantages to that. And there's a great model with the Center of Excellence for Oncology. So any other maybe one last question, Katie? Do you want to maybe tell me what would be a good question for me to answer? Or you could answer.
I was just looking, trying to load the Q&A here. Let's see.
One quick question, San Francisco. When you guys make sure, if you haven't yet, you might be on my list just because, I've known you over the years, but you want to get on the Women's Health Advocates list, because when you sign up for that, you pick your expertise, your background. Are you investor, founder, whatever, and you say the areas of interest. Is it mental health? Is it maternal health? Is it cancer? And then we ask location. So with that information, we are then setting up these follow-up events. So if you sign up and say San Francisco, we're obviously going to include you on that San Francisco planning and actual execution of the event. So just make sure you fill that out. That way we figure out what you're interested in and your locations. And then help us, get more parts of the country involved. We're almost there. Just the missing states Leslie just posted: Arkansas, Alaska, Kansas, Mississippi, New Mexico, Nebraska, North Dakota, Nevada, Oklahoma. Although I thought I got an Oklahoma person. Rhode Island, South Dakota, Tennessee, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming. So we're getting there. We're very close. So if you have any friends in those states, even if it's a second home in those states, or they go to school in those states, or they have a kid that goes to school in those states, let's be creative. We just want to make sure we're hitting all 50 states. That gives us a lot of power in Congress. Okay, so I think we are pretty much at time, unless, Katie, is there any final thing you think we should say?
I was going to share one more question, Liz. This is in the chat, and I think it's, very much in line with the conversations we've been having on the Hill. Would you talk a little bit about how we've been talking to members, especially Republican members, about the need for data on sex-based differences and how that differs from a gender ideology perspective?
Yeah. So, this president passed one of his first executive orders was saying it's the policy of the government that you are male or female. not that I agree, but if that's what he's going to say, then that means that sex differences have to be addressed in our research. And I don't get any pushback from that, no matter who I talk to. Everyone gets that. I mean, it's down to the cellular level. So what we're trying to do is to get language inserted into legislation that adopts that broad definition of women's health and down to the cellular level, so that then once that is the established norm, then you have to have research along those lines. So that is how we're tackling that. And like I said, I'm not getting pushback on that. And I think it's a good way to start the conversation, and just pointing out a couple of these basic statistics, like I said, and that really wakes people up with like, oh, I didn't realize it was, there was such autoimmune, people aren't thinking about it if it's not in front of them. So I think there's lots of opportunity. If you guys all have a chance to talk to congressional offices, staff, or the member, if they're home in their districts, going to a town hall, what have you, politely. I'm not a fan of being obnoxious or rude, but just polite persistence, explanation of the facts, I think is very, very effective.
And a reminder of just how much education still exists to be done with our members of Congress in this space.
100%. Yeah. All right. I'm sorry we can't get to all these questions. But we will go through these questions. I'm seeing really good ones in North Carolina. We will get to North Carolina, Las Vegas. Like I'm seeing this. SBIR grants, I think, are protected. SBIR grants are very, that's bread and butter to members of Congress. So I think we're going to be okay with SBIR grants. It's a percentage of any federal department that spends over 100 million on research has to dedicate towards SBIRs. So, but they are watching for language around diversity, equity, inclusion, which is ridiculous. And we could go on about that, but that's that. Okay. All right. We're good. Yay, team. Go forth. Keep advocating.